Ladies and gentlemen, so everybody's here, okay? Good afternoon already, ladies and gentlemen. You're very warmly welcome to the Ministerial Roundtable, which will be the second leg of our discussions about taking forward the results of the Summit of the Future from point of view of science. I'd like to ask our speakers to come to the stage and take their seats. Mr. Junguo Liu, the President and Professor of North China University of Water Sources and Electric Power, Deputy Prime Minister of Montenegro, Filip Ivanovic, the Senior Board Director of US National Academy of Sciences, Vam Turakian, Mr. Javier Garcia Martinez, past President of International Union of Pure and Applied Chemistry from Spain, and last but not least, Mr. Marcelo Fett, State Secretary and Secretary of Science, Technology and Innovation of the state of Santa Catarina, Brazil. Thank you very much to all of you for taking the trouble and investing thoughts and energy into this joint thinking of what to do with the outcomes of the Summit of the Future. The Summit of the Future and the Pact for the Future are a kind of attempt to give answer to the dangerous trends of declining multilateral order established and developed after the Second World War, together with the birth of the United Nations. As it was mentioned already yesterday and partly this morning, this world is moving towards a dangerous direction, towards block building, declining relevance of some global institutions, and a multifaceted, cascading polycrisis. It's quite clear that we need systemic solutions to a major systemic challenge. But there are good news as well. Scientific and technological leapfrogging is gathering unprecedented pace and is potentially capable of overwriting some existing dangerous trends. The set of grave challenges and the unprecedented opportunities are silver lining a new chapter of history. We haven't given a name to this new chapter, but I'm deeply convinced that it will be marked in the history books. The Pact for the Future is seeking solutions for this new chapter. Some may say, and maybe rightly, that the Summit of the Future in September in New York ended with a beautiful set of principles, but the concrete solutions are still to be ironed out. That's where science and technology could give a hand, highlighting the complexity of challenges in real terms and indicate the way ahead, helping decision shaping for the future. Our task is to take a close look at possible ways and solutions offered by science and to the decision shaping. So A little bit changing the speaking order that is featuring in your program, I would like to ask first Deputy Prime Minister of Montenegro, Mr. Filip Ivanovic, to take the floor. Mr. Ivanovic obtained BA and MA degrees from the Department of Philosophy of the University of Bologna and PhD from Department of Philosophy and Religious Studies of the Norwegian University of Science and Technology in Trondheim. He also holds postgraduate diploma in diplomatic practice from the United Nations Institute for Trading and Research. He is expert evaluator of the European Commission, expert of the Agency for Control and Quality Assurances of Higher Education in Montenegro, member of College of Research Associate of the European Science Foundation, and member of the Committee for Philosophy and Sociology of the Montenegrin Academy of Sciences of Arts. My question to you, Deputy Prime Minister, would be, Montenegro is at an advanced stage of accession talks with the European Union, where a number of files of negotiations are dealing with issues similar to those addressed in the Pact for the Future. How Montenegro can contribute to the implementation of the very ambitious vision of global transformation described and accepted by leaders of the UN member states earlier this September. Deputy Prime Minister, the floor is yours.
Is it working, the microphone? Yes, okay. Thank you very much, first of all, for the invitation to be here and to participate at this ministerial roundtable, and of course, thank you for the introductory remarks that you have given. Indeed, Montenegro is at the moment at, I would say, the highest peak of realization of its main foreign policy priority goal, which is joining the European Union. So this goal of joining the European Union has been the primary goal of Montenegro for the past 12 years since we are negotiating on accession. And we have made quite a lot of progress in the past 12 or 13 months. We have received the confirmation of this progress by getting the positive interim benchmarks assessment report in June this year for negotiation chapters 23 and 24, which are the crucial chapters for accession, those related to the rule of law and fight against organized crime and corruption. And I'm, again, additionally very pleased to be here in Budapest because in less than a month, probably, we will have another intergovernmental conference between Montenegro and European Union under the Hungarian presidency, where we will close additional 4 negotiation chapters. This priority of ours is complemented by 3 other foreign policy priority goals that we have envisaged in our government, and they relate to the NATO membership. We are also a member of NATO, the good neighborly relations, and number 4, last but not least, the bigger visibility and engagement of Montenegro in international and multilateral organizations, primarily, of course, the United Nations. So I also had the pleasure to head the delegation of Montenegro at the United Nations General Assembly in the end of September, where we have adopted and participated at the Summit for the Future, adopted Pact for the Future, and what Montenegro was able to say in the remarks, and of course to participate during the very formation of the document, is that fulfilling the sustainable development goals and working on them is in big part complementary with the European accession goals. So while we are working on reforms that are related to negotiation chapters on the accession with the European Union, we are also working on fulfilling many of the Sustainable Development Goals. And I'm very happy to share that our SDG index score is 73.05 and index rank is 57 out of 166. So we are, let's say, in the best third, so to say, more or less in the best third of countries when it comes to fulfilling the Sustainable Development Goals. We are also among the 32 or 33 United Nations member states that gave the commitment to the implementation of Sustainable Development Goals in July 2023, and these are coordinated by the Office for Sustainable Development, which is based in the General Secretariat of the government. So the very fact that this office is in the General Secretariat of the government and not in some particular line ministry tells you how important for us it is to coordinate the implementation of SDGs across the whole executive branch of government. I would also like to say that in the past years we have made quite a lot of progress in different areas, and one of those is in reducing child poverty. So there we have excellent results, and the rate of extreme material and social deprivation fell by nearly 10 percentage points, which is for us a big success. We have also very good results in health. However, health remains one of our concerns, and I'm sure that you understand what are the biggest concerns, like in many other countries that arose with new technologies, with new communication channels, with new social media and so on. This is, of course, the immunization rates that are in many countries under question, also in Montenegro, but I think that we have made also progress, quite a lot of progress there. We have a 72% universal healthcare index, and currently it's stagnating, but we are working quite a lot to reach the pledged level of 75%. When it comes to the children's rights, we also made that priority, and we confirmed it by inter alia positioning the Council for Children's Rights at the level of Prime Minister's Cabinet. So the Prime Minister's Cabinet is responsible for the Council for Children's Rights. Other areas in which we are working very hard are social inclusiveness, are early education enrollments, PISA testing, and so on and so on. Basically, and this is something that we always try to promote wherever we are, by working hard on implementing the SDGs, you are actually doing good for your own people and for your own country. So it's not just a, let's say, a political goal. Those are not just some very nice concepts that are nice to hear and on which we can all agree upon, but those are actually concrete reforms that help your people, that help your citizens, and on the other side, for us, they are complementary, as I said, with the European Union accession, so they also have a very important political dimension. So we are also in Montenegro working very closely with UNDP and various agencies of United Nations system, and this cooperation has been very, very fruitful in the past years, and we are hoping that it's going to be even more fruitful in the coming years. And these agencies and these parts of UN system, by working with us on sustainable development goals, have also greatly contributed to various elements of our European integration. And this is something that I cannot highlight enough. When it comes to the contribution of Montenegro as a small Mediterranean country with a population of 620,000 people, but still a country being in the Mediterranean that also experiences climate change, migration, influence of, as I said, new technologies, communication channels, social media, and so on and so on. It's very hard to say how we can influence the bigger ones, but we have another thing in mind, that everybody should do their own share. And if we all do our own share, then when it's all put together globally, we will make at least some progress. Although this is not very easy to explain to everyone. But we believe that by working on this and by putting this as a priority and by making the lives and everyday lives of our people, of our children, and so on, we will make a contribution. And an important part of being a small country, or important role of being a small country, is having a voice in the United Nations, and this is what we have been trying to do quite a lot in the past period, and we want to intensify this voice in the coming period. And we have been very active in the United Nations, and we have contributed also to the discussions when it comes to the Summit for the Future. So for this introductory remark, I think it is enough, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much indeed. Let me reiterate two notions mentioned by the Deputy Prime Minister. Transformation in the world starts with transformation at home. And the second is, never mind how small or big you are, we all have our contributions to make to the global transformation. Thank you much indeed. I would like to ask State Secretary Marcelo Fett to take the floor, wherever you prefer. Earlier, he was Secretary of Economic Development and Innovation in the Santa Catarina municipality of São José in Brazil. He is a former president of Itajaí, sorry for my Portuguese pronunciation, Participações S.A., a public company in the municipality of Itajaí. And my question to you, State Secretary, is that Brazil is a major player in multilateral processes, as well as international efforts to find scientific and technological solutions for sustainability transition. So where do you see the most impactful actions by scientific community to advance the implementation of the Pact for the Future, and where do you see the bottlenecks?
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for the invite to come here. As you know, the Summit of the Future, promoted by the United Nations and held in September 2024, was an event focused on defining global guidelines and actions to address today's greatest challenge, such as climate crisis, social inequalities, sustainable development, global security, and technology. The outcome of discussion was the document called Compact for the Future, with a global digital compact and a declaration for the future generation, attached a set of 56 measures that must be adopted by the member states, or all member states. In short, the purpose of the event was to define current actions to solve current problems, thinking about the world we will leave for the future generations. The challenge of the 21st century must be solved by the 20th century solutions, as told Mr. Guterres. Take forward for the results of the event, present significant challenges in several areas. First of all, international cooperation. One of the biggest obstacles is effective collaboration between countries, especially in a scenario of polarization and political and economic tensions. Global actions often clash with national interests, making it difficult to implement multilateral commitments. Countries with different levels of development also have difficulty aligning their priorities, especially with regard to economic and environmental issues. Second, financial commitments. Financing is an essential to achieve the established goals, especially those related to climate change, combat poverty, and sustainable development. However, it is difficult to secure financing because financial resources are limited in developing countries, make it difficult to make long-term commitments. Thirdly, solutions to climate and environmental. Actions to mitigate climate change and promote sustainable economic development often conflict with economic interests, especially in sectors such as fossil fuels and agriculture. 4, innovation and technological regulations. The advancement of technology, such as AI and biotechnology, raise ethical and regulatory issues that require effective and global governance to prevent misuse. However, there are significant differences between countries on how best to regulate these innovations, which makes it difficult to create common global standards. 5, support from civil society and private sectors. The involvement of non-governmental organizations and the private sector is essential to achieve the objectives, but these sectors are not always aligned with public policies and international guidelines. 6, social and economic inequality. It is necessary to take into account the realities of developing countries. Commitments to poverty reductions, for example, require not only investments, but also appropriate policies for redistribution and social justice. These challenges require political will, long-term commitment, and coordinate effort across countries, sectors, and citizens for the outcomes of the Summit of the Future to have a lasting impact. Santa Catarina is a small state in south of Brazil that has just over 1% of the country's territory, but is responsible for over 6% of our Brazilian GDP. And considering Brazilian legislation, it has been doing its part in line with the commitments established by the summit. In terms of international cooperation, the state of Santa Catarina created the State Secretary for International Affairs, which is working to promote supranational cooperation, agreement to promote sustainable economic development, technology transfer, and innovation. Agreements have already been signed with the state of Catalonia in Spain, with Portugal, and we are also in process of signing agreement with the city of Tampere in Finland. In terms of financial sustainable economic development, the state of Santa Catarina has created the most completely program to finance innovative entrepreneurship, with programs such as PRONAMP, the state program to support small business in Santa Catarina, and the Innovation PRONAMP, the state program to finance innovative entrepreneurship. Through these programs, the state pays interest on these loans, as well as we guaranteed needed for small business to access credit. In addition, a program called PRODEC, the state program for the development of innovative industry, finances investments in research, development, and innovation by postponing the payment of taxes. To reduce the social inequalities, the state of Santa Catarina has created the largest right education program in Brazil, called Free University for All, which pays for the university education of every citizen from Santa Catarina. After completing their degree, The students pay the amount of the scholarship and works for free in the community. In Santa Catarina, every citizen can study in what university they choose, not the university that can pay for. Finally, the Santa Catarina Connected program is investing $150 million to bring connectivity to more than 90% of the state's territory, mainly for schools, health centers, and small rural producers. Santa Catarina Connect is the most completely connected program in Brazil. Santa Catarina is a Brazilian state that stands out in several sustainability initiatives and has one of the strictest environmental laws in the country. The state is also one of the largest producers of organic food in Brazil, with programs that encourage the transition to more ecological and sustainable farm methods. Many cities have already implemented selective waste collections and recycling systems. We are the second largest innovation hub in Brazil and home to several startups and technology companies focused on sustainable solutions. The city of Florianópolis, for example, is the national capital of startups. Furthermore, it is the only state that has an energy transition law to end the use of fossil fuels in energy generations. In a country with continental dimensions, with continental dimensions like Brazil, with different levels of internal development, and which, despite being rich, has one of the highest rates of social inequality on the planet, it is essential to understand that the challenges to transform the pact to the future into reality require different efforts, but joint actions. At Santa Catarina State, even before the Summit of the Future, we have been working on public policies aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And most importantly, with the will of our governor, Mr. Jorginho Melo, to carry out public policies that will leave a legacy for economic and social development, now aligned with the actions defined at the summit. We will have results to present despite the big challenges. Before finish, I would like to show a short video of Santa Catarina so that you can know a little bit more about our state.
I'd like to invite you to dive into a world of wonders. Come and discover the southern Brazilian state of Santa Catarina. For Santa Catarina is a magical place. In less than 2 hours, you can go from the most sought-after beaches in South America to the coldest highland regions in Brazil. Here, you can choose between adventure and tranquility. Explore the landscape on land, in the air, and on the sea. Discover the incredible gastronomic, historical, and cultural diversity of this state. And find a world of experiences, of contemplation. From rustic to luxurious, from simple to sophisticated, unique and diverse. Santa Catarina is also a world of real opportunities, a strong economy with competitive industries, technology hubs, and a robust agricultural sector in Brazil and around the world. #1 for startups, the country's biggest exporter of pork and chicken. The best state in Brazil for tourism. It's the safest state in Brazil. It has the highest literacy rate, the longest life expectancy, and is among the top 3 on the HDI. Ranked second in social sustainability, fiscal stability, competitiveness, market potential, and infrastructure. with 6 seaports, 5 airports, 780 kilometers of railroad, and 12,500 kilometers of highways. Here, economic growth and quality of life go hand in hand, and they invite you to immerse yourself in this world of opportunities. This place is magical, but it's real. This is Santa Catarina. Come to Santa Catarina, the best location in Brazil to invest, to live, to grow, and to thrive.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you very much indeed. It was a charming movie, a surprise movie, by the way, but I can tell you that I will put Santa Catarina into my bucket list for sure. Let me just reiterate some of the takeaways from Mr. Pett's notions that sustainability transformation has a chance if pursued in parallel at national and state levels. Science and innovation has entry points at both levels, and at local level, the integrated thinking of the implementation of programs is a must. Thank you very much indeed. Now let me turn to my good friend Worm Turekian, Senior Board Director of the US National Academy of Sciences. And he is the Executive Director of the National Academies of Policy and Global Affairs Division. Prior to joining the academies, Dr. Turekian served as the Science and Technology Advisor to the US Secretary of State. In 2018, Dr. Turekian was appointed by the UN Secretary General as one of the 10 international members to promote the role of science, technology, and innovation for achieving the 17 SDGs. Well, my question to you is, the world is obviously watching the creation of a new administration in Washington. But it is still in the process, but could you give us concrete examples how scientific cooperation could advance the transformation described in the Pact of the Future that goes obviously well beyond a time span of an elected government?
Great, thank you, Csaba, and I will say I'm sure that everybody is more excited to hear me than to go to Santa Catarina. I think you're all going to be dreaming of the beaches while you listen to me talk. You know, I think the question you're asking is so pertinent right now because there are so many cross currents and so many tensions around the world, and those are not separate from where the science community exists. And so we have to think about real strategies and real approaches that are very practical to address challenges. You know, it is absolutely fascinating having this conversation here in something called the World Science Forum, but not just because of the World Science Forum, but because of Hungary and being in Budapest, which has obviously a history of having sort of situated itself in that space between East and West through the Cold War. And so much of what defined the 20th century was that idea of polarity and a polarized world. As we moved towards the end of the 20th century, what we saw was actually a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of energy around what seemed to be a movement towards globalization and the global entities around things like the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, the Rio Summit, things like the World Science Forum being created. All these different institutions that were built around this idea that post-Cold War there was going to be greater opportunity to think about looking at the big global challenges and addressing them as a global community particularly in the role that science and technology could play in that. I think what we've noticed and what we've observed, all of us, over the last decade or so, has been that that promise has actually taken a step back in some places, because the very science and technology which has been viewed as central to solving global problems has also provided an entry point for a competitive environment where there is a view amongst many in the policymaking community that rather than being a place where it is for the global good, there are real tensions that exist in that. And so I think we have to level set that reality, and that science and technology are not separate from that conversation. In fact, they are in many ways drivers for that conversation. And so when we look and we see at a more official level conversations around people working together, like-minded, like-valued in the political sphere, it is an obvious question to ask, what does that mean for addressing those very global challenges that bring us here together right now? And I would say that it's two pieces. One could be a very sort of difficult direction in that, which would be one saying, you're not going to address them at any sort of global scale. Things like even 2015's Paris Agreement, and those that were following, or maybe even some of you were in Baku this week, are seeing the breakdown of the multilateral climate system. You know, the 2015 Sustainable Development Goals, for many reasons, and I was involved, as you mentioned, Csaba, in some of the, not only the lead up to them, but the actual effort to implement, began to become impacted by, first, a global pandemic that diverted resources, energy, and enthusiasm, and the political reality that that sort of directionality of integration was going to be more and more difficult. Well, that's one way to approach this problem, and it is a problem. What that does, though, is it makes it even more important for those organizations and entities that have the opportunity to focus on advancing the science and thinking more about that track 2 kind of conversation, to begin to look for ways to build up a scientific commonality of purpose that can maybe provide, if nothing else, a baseline of conversation. But it can also do something even more important. It can provide the evidentiary base that can lead to real focused solutions and focused approaches. So earlier this week, and again here today, I had the opportunity to visit with some of my colleagues in China. I was in Beijing before coming here, for the very reason that the US National Academy of Sciences and the Chinese Academy of Sciences jointly announced the creation of a US-China collaborative in planetary health. And this program is designed to bring together the scientific communities in the US and China to begin to level set what are the major challenges that sit at that interface of food and agriculture, the movement of urbanization, the process of urbanization and sustainability, and human health. And that not just as individual efforts, but as a commonality and an integrative set of issues that are partially what planetary health is built around. All within the context of water scarcity and water issues and hydrological stresses, climate, and biodiversity. And so bringing together the scientific community to think through this has been critical in terms of being able to show the US and China's science communities can work together in a space that actually has global impact. And now I say that second part, and I'll finish here, because when you're talking about a US-China collaborative on planetary health, it's not US and China's planetary health, it's the planet's planetary health. And bringing together those communities to not only interact with each other, but to help inform conversations like this, conversations that are taking place in other bilateral and multilateral spaces, might provide some of that space to bring together a science-based approach rather than starting with the political-based approach, which is having much more difficulty in this environment as we can imagine. So I'll finish there without any kind of videos of anything, but hopefully you still have the great memories of people jumping off cliffs. I hope that's not a metaphor for where we are. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ron. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope we all realize that what we've just heard is the promise for the future. Is the promise that can take us to a different direction, different from the deepening geopolitical divide. Of course, geopolitical competition will stay with us, but this is the concrete way how science can help sort out our major issues. Thank you very much indeed. Then let me turn to my good friend Junguo Liu from China, who is working on the same platform actually, and who himself is a waterman. He is also the president and professor of North China University of Water Resources and Electric Power. What is your take? What the two major powers and what is the scientists of the two major powers can do for the best, for the bettering of the life of humanity in general and in your two countries in particular?
Can I use my slide?
Sure.
So thank you, Chava, for your invitation and your introduction. It's a great pleasure to be here. As introduced by Chava, I'm a waterman. I would like to promote Earthward Futures, a big science initiative to advance next generation water solutions for next generations. So we all know that life originated from water, and without water there is no life. But at the same time, many civilizations disappeared because of the problem, for example, the Maya civilization. So in December last year, the journal Nature organized a special issue themed on water to look ahead into the future with a title, Water, a Source of Life and Strife. So here there is a message from this special issue. Water can cause conflict, expose people to pollution, and put communities at risk in the form of flooding. So I worked for IPCC report as a lead author and for the 6th assessment report. And this slide will show that the water situation for all over the world. And in the graph above, for the regions with the brown, yellow, red colors, those are the regions with less water security. And one general conclusion from IPCC report is intensification of the hydrological cycle due to human-induced climate change is affecting physical aspects of water security, thereby exacerbating existing water-related vulnerabilities caused by other socio-economic factors. So when we talk about water security or water insecurity, particularly for water insecurity, that means too little water, too much water, too dirty water, and the aquatic ecosystems are degraded. So I would like to show you a few slides for these water problems. So the first issue, too little water, or the water scarcity. There are a huge number of studies published for water scarcity, and based on the IPCC report, currently about 4 billion people are expected to experience severe water scarcity for at least 1 month per year. So here, the graph below, when you see the color is red, different levels of water scarcity. So you can see in many regions are already suffering from water scarcity, particularly Africa, Asia, Australia, and western part of the US, and also including some part of South America. So water scarcity is a big issue for sustainable development. And you can find that there is a specific target for SDG. It's mentioned that we should address water scarcity and substantially reduce the number of people suffering from water scarcity. So this is too little water scarcity. And then I turn to the next issue for water insecurity, too much water, or the flooding problems. So the conclusion from IPCC report is the flood risks and societal damages are projected to increase with every degree of global warming. And based on the report, direct flood damages will increase by 4 to 5 times at 4 degrees compared to 1.5 degrees. And this can affect roughly over 2 billion people for all over the world. So we can find a lot of flooding problem for all over the world in the past few years. In China, in Pakistan, in Germany, this year in Spain. And also in many countries before, they do not have the flooding problem. But this year, like in Kazakhstan, in April, they have very serious flooding problem. They do not know how to tackle the problem. And then over 100,000 people, they have to be evacuated. So the flooding problem is becoming a big problem that can threaten sustainable development for many countries. So the third world problem I would like to mention is too dirty, or the pollution. More than 80% of wastewater resulting from human activities is discharged into rivers or sea without any pollution removal. And the coastal waters are deteriorating due to pollution and eutrophication. And roughly 80% of marine and coastal pollution originates on land. So you can also find specific targets from SDG to solve the water pollution problem, like to reduce the marine pollution of all kinds, in particular from land-based activities, or improve water quality. So the fourth issue I would like to mention for water security is the ecosystem collapse. So based on very recent studies, we found that about 20% of the cogen stations for all over the world already exhibited significant changes in river flows. And particularly, there is a weakening trend of river flow seasonality in the northern high latitude, highly linked to human-induced climate change. And over half of the rivers all over the world have experienced significant changes in biodiversity. So this slide, I show the change of the Aral Sea area. You can see that the Aral Sea has lost 90% of its size over half a century. And this can lead to a lot of problems for the people living surrounding the Aral Sea area. So I talk a lot about the water problem. And at the Summit of the Future in September this year, the world leaders adopted the Pact for the Future, including many commitments and deliverables. For example, sustainable development and financing, peace and security, STI and digital cooperation, youth and future generations, and global governance. So we need to have some good follow-up activities. And I think for the global water security, it's a big issue. And because water is closely linked to food, closely linked to energy, to climate, to ecosystem, and also closely linked to education, gender, and peace. So water security is a shining star in the dark or a sky of achieving the Sustainable Development Goals and all deliveries of the Pact for the Future. So that's the reason why I propose the International Big Science Initiative called Earth World Futures. And we aim to advance next generation solutions to world crises for next generations. And for this initiative, we would like to promote the data sharing and research collaboration to create global databases and information platform for world crises and promote joint research efforts. And sustainable management to develop innovative tools and practices for efficient water use and management. Capacity building to provide training and support to countries lacking expertise in water technologies, and integrated solutions to address the water, energy, food nexus with integrated green, blue, green infrastructure or solutions. So for such an Earth World Future initiative, it can include many projects. For example, the Global Water Atlas that can provide real-time data on water crises worldwide, and a water genome project to understand aquatic ecosystems for pollution control and stepwise ecological restoration, and climate resilient solutions to develop different types of infrastructure for managing water systems and disasters. So to conclude, by integrating Earth World Futures into the Pact for the Future, we can collectively build a world where water sustains life, development, and peace for generations to come. That's all my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Jungo. You may not even guess how close your proposal is to my heart. Not only because it is a very concrete way how to advance the implementation of the Pact of the Future, but this is a very good example of how to create a global cooperation network on issues that for centuries used to divide nations. Now it is a time when it has to become an area of close cooperation. So I'm sure when President Freund will make the final conclusions of this conference tomorrow afternoon, and will have to report to the world what were the ideas and the added value of this conference. Suggestions such as the Earth Water Future Initiative and some others might be ranking very high on the list, deserving a good attention of the global community. Thank you very much indeed for working on that concept. Last but not least, I would like to offer the floor to Javier Garcia Martinez, the past president of the International Union of Pure and Applied Chemists from Spain. Professor Garcia Martinez is a world-renowned chemist whose pioneering contributions to sustainable energy and chemical production have had significant global impact. He is a fellow of the International Science Council and a former member of the Global Young Academy. My question to you, Professor, is based on your experience with various international organizations, could you share your perspective on the main outcomes of the Summit of the Future? How do you see science and your field of expertise can advance the implementation of the political agreement?
So good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're still awake. It has been a long day. Distinguished members of the World Science Forum, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to address you today as we reflect on the conclusions on the US Summit for the Future. This meeting was not only a moment of dialogue, but also a call to action, a declaration of unity to address the monumental challenges of today. I would like to focus on two themes that emerged from the summit: the indispensable role of youth and the transformative power of science. Institutions such as the Global Young Academy and the International Science Council play a key role in empowering and connecting early career scientists and fostering interdisciplinary collaboration, providing leadership opportunities and promoting the inclusion of young scientists in global decision-making processes. For example, the Global Young Academy serves as a global platform for young scientists to collaborate on initiatives that bridge science, society, and policymaking. By providing access to resources and networks, it enables young researchers to increase their impact on pressing global challenges. Inspired by the Global Young Academy, more than 40 national young academies have been established, playing a key role in the science and technology ecosystems of their countries. For example, in 2019, a group of Spanish members of the Global Young Academy funded the Young Academy of Spain. 5 years later, we are 50 members working closely with our government on science, policy, and new legislation. Similarly, the International Science Council's efforts to empower and elevate the voice of early and mid-career researchers in international science are already producing great results. In particular, I would like to mention the Early and Mid-Career Researchers Forum, which has proven to be a very effective initiative to connect young scientists from around the world. Another key conclusion of the UN Summit for the Future was that technology, and in particular AI, has transformative potential to address our most pressing challenges, particularly in mitigating and adapting to climate change. Large language models have revolutionized the analysis of structured text, such as legislation and policy reports. These texts typically follow standardized formats and clear structures, making them amenable to linguistic and contextual analysis used by these learning models. However, applying large language models to scientific literature and databases poses significant challenges. Unlike other types of text, scientific information is often scattered across different formats, repositories, and structures. The lack of standardization hinders the ability of AI to analyze scientific information efficiently. To overcome these barriers, the scientific community must adopt digital formats and protocols aligned with the FAIR principles of making data findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. During my presidency of the International Union of Pure and Applied Chemistry, IUPAC, I have prioritized addressing this challenge. Working closely with CODATA and the International Science Council, we are developing protocols for scientific data sharing. These protocols aim to create a consistent framework that connects researchers, policymakers, and data to foster global cooperation. Just last week, during the COP29 meetings, many governments, NGOs, financial institutions, and scientific organizations endorsed the COP29 Declaration on Green Digital Action. This declaration highlights the transformative potential of artificial intelligence to drive climate resilient solutions. A key objective is to integrate digitalization into climate policy. In these regards, I would like to highlight the work I'm doing with an international group of experts to harness the power of AI to uncover non-trivial interactions between the SDGs. Using advanced large language models to analyze databases of documents, we have uncovered unexpected connections between the SDGs, providing actionable insights into which public policies drive progress and which hinders the achievement of the Agenda 2030. The findings inform policymakers with data-driven tools helping them to prioritize and implement the most effective strategies for sustainable development. For example, these figures here show the relationship between vulnerability to climate change and the relative frequency of SDG mention in the nationally determined contributions. When explicit mentions of the SDGs are used, the LED figure, no relationship is found, as most countries do not explicitly refer to the SDGs in their reports. However, when large language models are used, non-explicit mentions to the SDGs are found. Thanks to this, we have proven that countries that are more vulnerable to climate change care more about SDGs. We have also found persistent synergies and trade-offs across income countries. For example, while high-income countries prioritize systematic challenges such as health and inequality, low-income countries prioritize the water-energy-food nexus and natural resource management due to their vulnerability to climate impacts, which I think is really interesting. However, gaps remain in addressing education and gender equality, risking further inequalities and undermining holistic development. These examples highlight how AI can help us analyze extensive databases and uncover actionable insights that may otherwise go unnoticed. Because in many cases, even if the evidence is there, we may not be able or know how to find it. Thanks to AI, we are starting to learn how to uncover the evidence hidden in the vast amount of scientific information available. Our ultimate goal is to provide these tools to policymakers to help them design more effective, of course, evidence-based public policies. Let me conclude by saying that just a few weeks ago, the devastating effects of climate change were painfully evident in my country, in Spain, where catastrophic floods claimed the lives of more than 200 people. But this tragedy echoes the events of last year in Derna, Libya, where more than 10,000 people lost their lives as a result of Storm Daniel, which was triggered by the same cause, the abnormally high temperatures in the Mediterranean. By tackling climate change is not just another SDG, it's an urgent global priority. Its escalating impacts are not an abstract concern, but a direct threat to human lives, economies, and ecosystems, requiring the best science, well-informed policies, but also, and I want to emphasize this point, industry, which has been rather absent from our discussions so far. I look forward to our panel discussion and interacting with all of you now in the panel, or maybe later, to reimagine how we can empower young minds, especially from those in difficult situations, to promote science and the foundation of a better, sustainable future for all, not just for the privileged. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Javier. Ladies and gentlemen, we have just heard the voice of the future generation of scientists, or if you wish, we have heard the voice of the future. And we know that future will exist only if we have a good understanding, if you wish, a kind of social contract between and among generations. Thank you very much indeed. It was very valuable. Ladies and gentlemen, we have 12 minutes left. At the very end, I would like to spare 3 minutes for a very direct, short question addressed to all our speakers. But now I would like to open the floor to your comments, questions. Yes, I see the gentleman over there raising his hand.
Yes, thank you, and thank you to all presenters. My name is Emmanuel. I'm from Angola, but I live around here in the Netherlands. So my point is, and it will be with a follow-up question, is that we have seen that the impact of climate change is exacerbating in the global south, as it has been presented. And the reason for that, in my mind, is that it's not because the issue is just happening in the global south, but rather because there is lack of resilient systems that can endure the severity of global warming. Now, with that in mind, my question is, what kind of policies are there or are we proposing to ensure that we build resilient systems in these global south countries so that these adversities can be mitigated without putting these countries in debt? Because what we see currently is that there are projects that fund some of initiatives to mitigate that. However, it's through debt processes, which is not, I think, good. And just lastly to say that I don't think the curve of the global warming issues will just flatten suddenly. It will take long. We'll have to deal with this issue for several years, but rather let us build the resilient systems that can support the severity of these issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Who would like to take this policy-related issues from the panel?
I can try. I can try. So thank you for the question. Let me say that there is no real fight against climate change without climate justice. And the policy is very clear. We need more funds for the global north going to the global south. That's the discussion today in Brazil during the COP29. The resources needs to be there, and not only financial, but also capacity building and technology transfer. If we don't understand that we are here together dealing with this problem, we are not going to solve it.
Vuan, would you like to address this question?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, thank you for the question. I think one of the challenges, of course, is to be realistic. These conversations about transfer of funds and transfer of technology have been going on in the UN for decades without resolution. The SDGs try to address it by putting together the Addis Ababa Declaration, which looked at things like how do you facilitate technology incorporation. I'm going to change the frame of this, though, a little bit, because I think one of the things we are seeing with extreme events is, in fact, it's not only a differentiation between global north and global south. Even within regions, you're seeing a differentiation based upon maybe level of economic development or growth. Look at my country in the United States. The impacts of flooding, we talk about flooding, in rural North Carolina because of orographic precipitation from a hurricane were massive and are still having enormous implications and impacts on rural regions in a way that they may not be able to recover as quickly and be as resilient as other systems. So when we look at things like urbanization, part of it is saying, how do you build in the resilient systems in urban systems, but not forget about the rural areas, which are oftentimes going to have very much the same types of impacts and probably less resilient to be able to address them.
Thank you much indeed. This aspect is very often overlooked in the UN negotiations, though the realities are changing very rapidly. Now I'd like to offer the floor to the lady in the first row. And since our time is very limited, please make your question very succinct.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. I've been delighted to listen to Vaughan about this pact with China, this agreement for a better future, for a healthy planet. And thinking of, well, the call for action that is included in the Pact for Future, I must say, I come from a nuclear weapon-free zone. And I saw with interest that as part of the Pact of the Future, there is a call to, a commitment to look into the nuclear weapons issue and reduce the use of nuclear weapons and look at also the effect, the impact of nuclear radiation. And this is, for me, this is a call for commitment from the scientific community. And on the other side, we know that the nuclear weapon states are still modernizing their arsenals with this approach, let's say, Cold War approach of security by deterrence. So my question would be to is there any possibility that as part of this agreement you also deal with this issue that is part of the Pact for the Future? I know it is a difficult question, but it is on the table and it should not be overlooked. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I'll be very fast and just say I don't know that that is the right mechanism for that conversation. Those issues around nuclear weapons and other weapons of mass destruction often take place in other venues, either ones that are more official, ones that are more connected to the security space. This is really focused on the issues of that interrelated piece of of health, urbanization, and food and agricultural systems. But that conversation always about nuclear proliferation is something that takes place and should continue to take place elsewhere.
And I would say even those areas, if something concrete would come out of your cooperation, that would make a game changer for the world.
I'll just quote the quote that many people know from Reagan, Ronald Reagan, which was, "We don't distrust each other because we have nuclear weapons. We have nuclear weapons because we don't trust each other." So things that you can do to build out trust may have secondary impacts, but that's not the focus of this.
Thank you. We have one more minute for one more quick question. The lady, please, here.
Thank you for the presentation. My name is Salim Sungu from Imperial College London. So my question is about water. So in your projects, do you also do monitoring of virtual water, especially because there's cases of water scarcity and there's evidence that, there's importation of virtual water, especially from water scarce region to water rich region, and how is that going to affect prediction of water in future?
Okay.
Please
okay, thank you for your question. In fact, we have a lot of studies on water, but interestingly, not always that the water goes from the water scarce region to the water rich region to the water scarce region. It really depends on the resources endowment. For example, in China, we found that it's the land that can drive the flow of water. So I think it is important to think about the water to tackle the water scarcity problems. And I also want to give a very short comment on the first question about the impact of climate change on water issues and other issues. I think one very important issue is the collaboration among countries, because we have a very recent study showing that in the past, for example, in the past 30 years, China suffered from water scarcity very seriously, but in the future, the situation will get better. But if we look at the African countries, in the future, more and more regions, they will have the water scarcity problem. So this means maybe the experience we have accumulated to solve the water scarcity problem can help the future problem in Africa. So I think a collaboration among countries can solve the common water problems. So partnership, involvement, collaboration, these issues are very important.
Thank you very much indeed. Before closing, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to pose a very short question asking all our panelists to give a one-sentence answer for this question. What would be your message to the Secretary General of the United Nations or to the President of the General Assembly of the United Nations, and through them to the Member States, how science can and will contribute to the implementation of the Pact of the Future, how to give an impetus to the implementation of the Pact of the Future? What is your one-sentence suggestion or message?
So, I understand that we need to work together, all of state members, and to understand the different development of the countries and take the science to solve the different problems in the whole countries. For example, we have a lot of problems in Brazil with water, with food. Every single year we have problems in Santa Catarina state with thousands of people. 2 years ago in São Paulo we have a big problems with maybe a lot of 1,000 people. And this year we have a big problem in the Rio Grande do Sul state with 1 million of people. So that's it. I'm sorry.
Thank you very much. So join hands and build on scientific evidence. William?
I would say that the message I would send is science is not going to make policy. Science is going to help policymakers look at the options for where their different outcomes are.
Excellent. Thank you much indeed.
Yeah, I would add that for that to happen, for science policy to happen, we need capacity building. We need to start educating scientists also how to provide policy advice. In terms of science education, communication, we also need to start listening. So this is not about explaining, it's about empathy, understanding what policymakers, but also the public need. And the main message is that if we want science to contribute to solve our big problems, we need all the available talent. And many young minds, especially in the global south, don't feel invited to the science endeavor because they don't have the means and the opportunities, and we desperately need all that talent.
We couldn't agree more. Thank you much indeed. Jungo?
Okay, very short. We need an actionable big science initiative on Earth's water futures to collectively generate next generation solutions to water crisis for the next generations. Thank you.
So we need a global water information system. Thank you much indeed. Deputy Prime Minister Ivanovic.
I must only add one sentence in response to our friend from Angola, because the Pact of the Future is the most detailed agreement that talks also about the reform of the international financial architecture, and it also calls precisely for what you have said, to alleviate the access to funds for implementing policies and solutions for those countries that don't have really enough money and can be in debt. So mobilization of more money from the multilateral banks, reform of the architecture, better financial arrangements with developing countries, precisely in order to fulfill these goals. So it's all in words, it's all on paper. We just need to work together on implementing these things. And as far as the message is concerned, I would say that when science and diplomacy join hands, that's where conflicts and problems are best solved.
Thank you much indeed. It was an excellent closing idea for this session. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me appreciating the actions and ideas put forward by our panelists. And many, many thanks for your attendance. Many thanks for your active contribution. Have a good time.
Ladies and gentlemen, as in the previous days, we have a couple of press briefings